I like the songs on the record, but I love the production, especially the guitar tone and vocal melodies. Dig as a song I don't really remember, to be honest, but that drum fill is absolutely absurd. Again, I point out the production of this record. I appreciate the effort to keep things interesting with the tempo switch and ska chords, but I've never liked NOFX ska stuff personally. I think the beef I have with this album is that I prefer the sillier, more sarcastic side of this band. And Punk In Drublic is a very heavy, dark, and serious album for the most part. So it just doesn't do the same things for me that their later records do. That being said, the songwriting on this record is in a class all its own. The band is super tight, as always, and these songs just sound so freaking good on this record. What's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to the Punk Rock Review Podcast, man. Today, Rob and I are talking about a couple of I think very influential and very important records from the, I'd say, early to mid 1990s. We've got NOFX, Punk In Drublic, and we've got Grimple Up Your Ass. Yeah, I don't really know where to go from there other than to say, what's up, Rob? How's your day?
What's up? I think I might have studied the wrong record. I thought we were doing the record from 94.
Wait, what?
On the Grimple record, yeah.
No, it's Grimple Up Your Ass.
Oh, I thought we were doing Darker Shade of...
Did you really?
Yeah, because I knew we were doing a Grimple album, and I figured we were doing the one from 94. So
no, the only one that I've ever even cared about was Up Your Ass. It's all right, though.
Well, we could talk about the band. Yeah, we have good
I was going to say,
perspective.
we're more or less going to talk about Grimple anyways, just like in general, because I didn't have a lot of specific notes on that album anyhow. So we're going to talk about Grimple, which honestly makes for a better episode anyways.
It will. I think we'll be able to fill in some gaps because they're pretty different albums. I did listen. I listened to everything just kind of in preparation, but focused on that. That was funny. This is real time podcasting, folks. This is the production meeting.
No, this is what happens, dude, when like you live in different states and you have to like text each other, and it's like kind of sporadic sometimes. And sometimes I'm really busy, sometimes Rob's really busy, and you know. Or just, you know, communication. Like it's so crazy that it just with any kind of, I don't know, any kind of entertainment, any kind of job, really, if you can't let stuff like this roll off your back, like you could have easily had, like, that could have put us in a funk. Man, it is what it is, bro. There's nothing we can do about that at this point. We just kind of have to move on and
that's
try to make it as entertaining as possible.
Wait, we are talking about the same legendary 1994 NOFX album, right?
White Trash, Two Heaves, and a Bean? No. What year did that come out?
93. So that
93. Okay.
Or no, 92. Actually, I don't know. Now
I knew it was right before.
It's right before it, yeah. So it could have, man. We could just be all over the place today.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it if you want to. I definitely did a lot of preparation for the NOFX part of this, like the Grimple stuff. I just couldn't even find a lot of information, to be honest.
There's not a lot, so I think that'll be interesting for you and I to kind of piece together what we found, because I think you're a bigger fan of them. I was like generally aware of them, but then I thought, let me go deep, and it was easy to go deep because there was like not that much to
the deep end's like 2 foot of water.
yeah. It's like, you know, when I go swimming or something, you know.
Well, I really like Grimple a lot as far as that album, enough to wear a patch on my hoodie, right?
Yeah.
I've never claimed to be an expert on any of it, so I'm not going to act like I am right now.
Yeah.
I just really like that. Specifically, Grimple Up Your Ass is an album I really like. I've heard the rest of their material. I like it pretty good, but the album that I've had it a few different times in my life, and I've always really appreciated it. And we'll talk about why in a few minutes. Before we get to that point, anybody that's wondering what we've been up to, I talked to Jim Lindbergh yesterday at Pennywise. It was insane. Like we talked about Straight Ahead because we just celebrated the 25th anniversary of that album. And then I did get to ask him 2 questions that I was like, let me get to a point where I could not have to interrupt to ask. And we got to, towards the end of the video, I got to ask him, so what's up with the Punk Rock Museum moving your entire garage to the building? We got to talk about that for a minute. And I got to talk to him about his punk rock origin story, because everybody thinks they know what it is, but they don't. I got to hear from him how he got into punk rock. So that'll be in the episode as well. I think that's pretty amazing that I got to ask him that.
Yeah, it's important knowledge to add. I know when I've done my streams in the past, a lot of people say like there's a lot of stuff about early Pennywise that we just kind of don't know, which is weird because they're just around. Someone could just ask them as you agree.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was like, I had written on my page like 2 different things. What's up with the PR museum, and how did you get into punk rock? That's all I cared to ask him outside of just organic conversation. I just wanted to talk to him. And it was about an hour, bro. We did like a whole hour. And it was pretty amazing, man. So lastly, I got an announcement to make. Dude, it's the end of an era. The squeaky chair is gone.
Oh, my goodness.
Literally, when I was texting you that I was ready,
there
was a knock on my door. And my chair's here.
It was the chair. Okay. Wow.
I bought one of the chairs that you recommended.
Yeah.
I bought a black one. It's all black. I almost got one that had white accents because I've been in a white chair for so long at this point. It kind of fits the motif. But I wanted it to focus on the background more than the foreground with the colors and stuff. So I bought an all black one. But I think it's close to the same one that you've got. And since I bought a new chair, I just went ape shit and I bought a new mic too. And it'll be here probably tomorrow. And it's a really, really nice one.
Oh, wow.
And I bought a mic arm and everything. So I will have a better setup next time we talk. It's going to look and sound probably quite a bit different. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, we're going to be all big text and booming voice going to be coming through there now on these pods.
Well, yeah, I'm going to have to figure that out actually, because I do talk kind of loud and a lot. But I do think that when you're doing a channel like this, there's a few things you have to consistently concern yourself with, and that would be the quality. You have to improve the quality, not every week or anything, but every so often you have to put in the effort to improve the quality. That's what I've done with pulling back on the song reactions and putting in more time on each video and making it like a mini documentary type video. The one with the Tim Armstrong could have just been some song reactions where I talked about them. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go through, write a script, do a what do you call that? A voiceover, and put in some imagery, some footage, and like really put in an effort to make a good channel and or a good video on my channel. And so it's pretty cool, man. I think the next step has always been. I think the last thing I can do for video and audio is to improve my mic, and part of that would be to get a better chair too, because this thing does make noise. But it was, the chair I could afford when I could afford it. So I got it. It's pretty comfortable. It's nice. But the one that I'm hopefully going to put together tonight after work is considerably better. So
that's good. Yeah, it makes a difference. I watch TV on this all the time, or just have it like I roll it out to the side of the living room and just chill on it.
Does yours have a footrest?
No, it doesn't.
They just had like a Father's Day thing. We talked about it on the show for a minute, and Google heard it, and it just started sending me ads, of course. So they had like a Father's Day deal that they had like upgraded versions for the price of the regular versions. So my wife basically paid for like the first 2 payments for a Father's Day gift for me. And so I don't have to worry about paying anything until like the end of the summer. And so, it was still a couple $100, man. These chairs aren't cheap, dude. Anybody who's trying to podcast, I try to tell them like, start with your couch, your phone, and a cheap tripod. Start there. If you like it, then start upgrading. Because this stuff is not cheap. And you can do it with simple, ingredients.
Yeah, a lot of money on this desk right now. Just looking around.
Bro, I'm telling you, dude. Yeah. Looking around my room right now, I'm looking at like 10 grand just sitting right in front of me, and that doesn't include what's behind me.
And all this stuff in front of me could give out at any second too. So
bro, dude, the monitor could just kaput. The PC could just explode. My freaking keyboard might just stop working. Who knows? But I told somebody I'd been using a shotgun mic for the entire 4 years I've been doing YouTube, and they were like, "What?" And I was like, "It just sounds okay. It works, man." I bought a couple of different mics that just didn't work for me. I finally decided to get a USB mic that was like, researched in quality.
Yeah,
it was, at a price point that I was like, ugh, one of those.
I never
mics.
could get my environment quiet enough for the shotgun mic to really I can never get it like treated in the right way for those to not sound just so hollow.
Yeah, well, I have so much shit in this office that it doesn't sound hollow. But when I scoot back, though, you can tell. If I don't have it right next to me, you can tell. Which is why I wanted a denser, more thick sound for my vocals, because I'm talking to people that have better equipment than me, but I'm the host, and it's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, you're talking to a lot of musicians though too, who just will naturally have a mic laying around that sounds pretty good.
That's exactly what I was like. Man, I'm talking to a lot of people that sound better than me on my own show. This is not okay. Like I gotta, I've had a lot of people that they get on here with like a cell phone. They're like, which is perfectly fine. But dude, I've always been of the mindset you just appreciate the people that have the time for you. Last thing before we start talking about Grimple, check these 2 relics of the past that I picked up on eBay and got them in the mail, and I couldn't believe it. I actually picked up another copy of Op IV, but it's pre-barcode.
Oh.
1990 right here.
Jeez.
I know. And then I got a 1988 Walk Among Us. The thing about this one is all signs point to it being legit still sealed. Like never opened, not a reseal. Like legit.
An original 80s pressing. Yeah.
1988. Wow. It's got the Warner Brothers cassette case, which is always something you look for. And I don't see anywhere where it was removed. Like nothing looks like it had been removed out of the cassette. The tape looks completely unused. If I told you what I paid for this, you'd be like, what? It was not much, man.
Oh, wow.
I jumped on it. Bro, no, it's worth quite a bit. But I was like, oh, shit. And I just bought it. Like I was like, worth the risk. Buy. So, okay. Now that I've ran my mouth for 10 minutes, let's talk about some Grimple. Grimple up your ass. Okay, so I did just copy paste some information about the band because I thought, in my infinite wisdom, that they were older than 1990. I thought they were a 1980s band. And as far as I can tell here, I was wrong. I always thought that Operation Ivy was influenced by Grimple. I think it was the opposite. I think they were heavily influenced by Operation Ivy.
Right, and then Rancid would claim to be influenced
by Grimple.
Right, and I think that's why I think of them as an 80s band because I've not spent a lot of time listening to them over the years, but all the bands I always liked them. So they're just kind of influential right before like a lot of the stuff got really, really big. So NOFX was always citing them, and the Rancid camp was always citing them. And
Rancid definitely incited them.
Yeah, so I think like we think of them, and their sound is a very 80s sound in a lot of ways. So I think that's why we think of them as being older than they were, where they're more actually kind of contemporaries. They're just sort of like proto like melodic hardcore or that kind of thing. Right. You know what I mean? They kind of had that before that was really like a sound. They were kind of fooling with it, and they're like one of the bands that I think these other bands later on, like the skate bands and the hardcore bands, kind of took from and put like their spin on.
That's kind of the thing about this band. They have a guitar tone, and like they're specifically the sound of their instruments sound like Operation Ivy, but I guess that's by design. And I just had it flip flopped. I've always really appreciated this one album. But I've never been like an expert on the band. And that's one of the things I've been doing with my channel is I've been going back and like a band or an album that I really love. I've been learning about it backwards because when I was younger, man, I just like, oh, this is good. In the CD player, I never cared to look into it because it was so much work to find out information back then. And then by the time it got to where the internet was around, I didn't have a computer until I was in my mid-20s, dude. Like I was never a tech guy. I was living in punk houses. So like we would talk about bands sometimes, but not enough for me to like really learn about them, man. We were too busy playing our own shows. So that's the thing is people go, oh, you didn't know anything about your music that you listened to when you were growing up. It's like, no, dude, I was too busy going to shows, playing shows, setting up merch booths and all that stuff that I didn't dive into the history of it. I was active in my scene at a very young age. So I'd never had the time to, like when we would sit around. Okay. So like, since I was involved with bands, so your normal punk rock group of people, right, that are just like going to shows and stuff, you very well might sit around and open up CD booklets and talk about these bands and discuss history and the way an album was made or whatever, right? And we did that to a very small degree, but we were sitting around talking about like, hey man, can you help me make these shirts? Hey, can you help me design this? Hey, what are we doing about this song? Hey, let's go practice. I was in that part of it. So like, we didn't sit around and talk about music like we do now. And so, I don't know. I just wanted to preemptively say this because people get so upset about my lack of historic knowledge. I just never cared about that, man. I do now, and I'm learning about it now. But I don't know. It seems to be something that really offends people, and I think you got to really like loosen up, man. Like, if that bothers you, first off, oh well. But man, I try not to be a dick about stuff, and people just force me into that corner. That being said, I was saying that to describe, like, I never really knew a lot about this band other than I loved their vocals. I loved their guitar tone. I loved the sonic noise I heard from this record. And this is the one that stuck with me. And it's because it's the more melodic of the two. It is very much more, I mean, it's honestly, they sound like two different bands. So
yeah, this one's more, it's closer to what like a skate punk would become.
Yes.
Versus I think the album that I dove into, the LP, was more crossover thrash. I think you would
very much more into that.
Yeah, and I think that album, because I have a lot of notes on that LP. It's more of like I was trying to do this analogy a couple of weeks ago. There's like the difference between like a salad and a melting pot when it comes to like influence. And I think like Grimple on the second album, it's much more of a salad. There's just like all of a sudden there's like a part from some new wave of British heavy metal, and then there's like a skate punk part, and then there's like a melodic part, and then there's like a Casualties part, and then there's like a Fugazi part. It's not really one coherent sound. The first album is more of a coherent sound,
correct,
which is more in line again with just like I always thought of Grimple more as like San Francisco hardcore.
Interesting.
And I think the earlier album is more like the San Francisco punk that we think of, which I didn't know. I feel really stupid. They were from Santa Fe originally, which I had no idea.
I was gonna bring. Well, they moved to Oakland in like 1990.
Yeah, and so in my brain, they were always like, when I think of San Francisco hardcore, I think of like them. I think of them. I think of that writing, the logo, and all that. So I think of like the hardcore bands that were just kind
wonderful logo.
Yeah, the like MySpace 2005 metal logo that they were doing back in the 80s.
Like Filth and Osrotten and stuff, they were all the same.
Yeah,
like ilk. You know, you got those bands, in my opinion, are all in the same batch.
I associate them more with that as an identity, but this album is again much more in the line of the stuff that we talk about and the later melodic stuff. It just kind of comes out in 91. I mean, think about it. Like Suffer comes out in like 89, Operation Ivy 88. So there's still not a lot of like precedent for like melodic hardcore yet. You know what I mean? It's still kind of, I would say
this is one of the, what do you call that? Like foundational points of that kind of music.
I agree, especially because when it came out and then how popular they were. It's just like it's a proto version of the sound later. It's not quite there yet, but it's.
I've always considered them more of a street punk band. But when I listened to it again over the past week, I was like, man, I think the imagery and the name and the like song titles, it feels street punk. But when I listen to it, it feels more like skate punk and pogo punk to me, like just bouncy, like energetic, but melodic and up tempo. They don't have a lot of dark sounds in their first album. Now that's the thing, is that's why I don't really listen to the second album much. It's a lot more confusing. It's not as coherent. It's not one like cohesive sound. It's quite a bit more. Like you said, it's more like
I guess you would say no. So the first album, one of the notes I have here is they're like the California Casualties is what I have, because they have that's kind of casualty, and Casualties are fairly melodic as well, but it's kind of like those type of songs, and he kind of has like a bit of Jorge's way of like going through it and stuff, but it's got a little bit of the silliness, a little bit of the California, a little bit of that melodic kind of surfside sort of just infused in it, just a little bit. And then like the other album, this is so funny, I did like a distribution of influences of how I felt it was. So I said it was like,
it's awesome.
30% LA hardcore, and just that's like a general term for LA punk, but like a lot of the there's like a lot of the punk fast. And then even like the Black Flag and the sludgier stuff. They have those, like the Rollin stuff, and then 30% LA thrash, like legit LA thrash metal, and then 20% generic punk from different scenes in the 80s. So you hear a little bit of Washington, a little Fugazi, a little New York, a little bit of a hint of the melodic stuff. And then I have 20% generic metal subgenres from Black Sabbath all the way up to like Pantera, because there's parts on the other album.
On the second album, right?
Yeah, where he's doing like almost like a Phil Anselmo type of like a vocal delivery over like a skate punk stuff. But it's not like the stuff later, because like a lot of the Fat Record stuff is the skate punk is the metal influence, but transitioned into like a punk sound. They're kind of doing that here, but it's not as smooth. It's just all of a sudden we're going to go into the Diamond Head part in the middle of what started out as like a Pennywise song that then has a really slow Black Flag part like right over here. It feels like it's unproduced maybe, would be the way to think of it.
Well, like like the band just got in there and it was like, here's what we've got. And the guy that was behind the board was like, cool, hit record.
Do that, and it might have been a choice. Again, we don't know. Like I kind of, because they're as small as they are, I almost don't care to know. I almost like the fact that it just kind of exists like this and want to see what it is.
I am an eternally curious person, and I want to know. I would love to talk to that band. Anybody from that band, I would love to talk to and just get some insight as to like, how did it happen? Where did it come from? Because their sound at that point in time, listen, man, I can figure out where they got some Operation Ivy influence from, but they were, even to this day, they have a more unique sound. They don't sound like other bands. That's why I like that album so much, is because it's got its own thing going on.
I have a hypothesis.
Excellent. I'm all ears.
I think it's the Santa Fe factor, and I'm serious about this.
Okay.
Because, and you maybe relate to this a little bit, when you don't live in like cool places, you kind of are exposed to everything, and like there's not necessarily a distinction always between like the punks and the metal guys. It's just kind of like the alternative people who would have kind of got and received all
that. Makes sense.
That doesn't surprise me that they're sort of deploying all of that, whereas maybe if you're a California kid, you really can, like if you're a Lookout guy, you really like the poppier stuff, or if you're like a crackhead, you really like the LA stuff, or you know what I mean? Like you can really you can zero in on what you like.
Hey, look, dude, disclaimer here, man. I do not feel that way about LA punk rock. I love LA punk rock, but it is a little more on the I'll say like sharp side. Like there's a little more danger in LA. I mean, I know you were being silly, but
LA feels more like gangster music, so to speak, in that way.
It's definitely a little more like boots on the ground, man. It's a little scarier there. But like I feel like I was in Houston specifically, was really dangerous back then too. So I feel like not quite as bad as LA, but like I feel like I could have been like, all right, them's my people right there.
Well, Houston's not exactly it's the safest place on earth.
No, dude, it's not. But and we, in all of our clubs were in the heart of downtown. So like when we would go out, man, we would get the shit kicked out of us by like random people that you would not expect to be messing with you. Like at least in the early 90s, mid 90s, when I was young, started going out, I was very naive, man. I was like no business.
Rival punk gangs there, or was it
just
generic gangs? Yeah, like because I think that's the difference between California probably and other places is like the punk gangs are warring with each other.
Well, no, we had North Side punks and South Side punks for sure. Houston is a humongous place, just square mileage. And I remember, I think the band was called PWI. I might be mistaken. Now in like adult days, we're all cool. We see each other out and about. It's like, what's up, dude? How you been, man? Like we were all 17 to 20. We're idiots, man. But there was the Arm in Arm guys on the north side. I lived in that punk house. We lived in the Arm in Arm house in Copperfield. Anybody that's from Houston will know exactly what I'm talking about. And then there was, I think it was the PWI guys, and it was just like rival factions, bro. We just didn't get along. We couldn't seem to like get on the same bill. There was always like this band trying to snipe this slot on the show that's coming through town, and like, it just caused a lot of drama because, dude, you didn't have the way to communicate back then that we do now. You couldn't. We didn't have the same cars. Like, we couldn't just drive across town. Dude, can you imagine what it was like for a 19-year-old punk rock kid who was like living on his own, barely scraping by, to try to go to a show that was 35 miles away, but in the same city? Like, think about that. It was
you're just going to be natural crazy. To your habitat. Like,
so
that's what you're going to do.
So we absolutely had like literal, like the guy I had on the show is going to have his episode come on today. His name's John. If you guys see the episode with John Hale, first off, please go watch that. He's been my friend since we were 5 years old, dude. And he owns probably the best place in Houston to play punk rock music. And they are just turning the screws on this guy, man. He's getting bent over and fucked, man. So he needs help from the community if we can help. That being said, that's the guy I lived with, bro. I lived with that cat like 20 years ago. And we were at a show. Whenever I tell people the show, the story about, I was at Fitzgerald's once and this girl threw a candle at me and I ducked and it hit my friend in the face. That's the guy I'm talking about. It hit him right in the middle of his eyes and it just burst him open. And that was one of the bigger fights, man. It was chaos, bro. Dude, there was ambulances everywhere, cops everywhere. We were like jumping off the roof of a 2-story venue to get away from the police. My buddy, I think he broke his ankle doing it. Man, it was wild back then because there was no cell phones. We didn't have no pagers, nothing. So we were just like ducking out and running. Hope we can get home. I mean, we were 30 miles from the crib, dude. It was crazy. Anyways, bro, that deviated from the LA punk scene. But it feels like like when I think of LA, I think about, man, it was probably a lot like that, because I know LA's real spread out too. It's concentrated, but it's a big area.
Yeah, and I think there's a specific, like the LA punk specifically, that was very in the middle of the city. Like in the 80s, it's considered like the LA punk is like one of the big gangs that's on like the LAPD's like list of like.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, well,
to me it's so stupid, because it's just a bunch of kids hanging out.
Yeah, and it really was, and it's like Jim and those guys, you know, and Fat Mike and these guys just kind of going to shows and slam dancing. Now the suicidal tendencies, that's a little bit different, because the suicidals were like, I think, just legitimately a street gang in that way, you know.
It definitely, if it wasn't, it definitely had a lot of that influence in it. And I'm not going to put a label on them like that, but everything I've heard, it sounds like that's pretty accurate. Like, I don't actually have the information to know. What I've heard is like that's true, but I wasn't there. So.
Which again, and we always bring that up to kind of talk about, to bring it back to what we're talking about here with San Francisco. It's why San Francisco just feels like the relief valve from all of that, and that's where
it really does.
Tim comes out, and I know like Fat Mike has said like, oh, you could go have fun at shows in San Francisco, or you could get your teeth kicked in at shows in LA. And it was just,
I've actually heard him say stuff like that. He does say things like that.
A different kind of vibe. And you see a band like Grimple that kind of feels like, even though like, again, their roots are here from Santa Fe to San Francisco, two very similar types of cities generally, though, like two cities that are very much associated with each other. But it feels like, and it smells like it kind of comes out of LA the way.
Well, so here's the thing, except that it's got this air of good times. You know what I'm saying? Especially with Grimple Up Your Ass. It's got this like feel of like, it feels like a show. The whole list of songs, if you listen to it front to back, it feels like a set list almost, man. And you compared them a little bit to like the Casualties. The Casualties had more of a rah, 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 like anger and pissed off, whereas I feel like Grimple might have been a little younger than that, so they weren't quite as concerned with that kind of stuff. And so they were more upbeat, willing to have some fun. I mean, the album's called Grimple Up Your Ass, and the song is it's real melodic and upbeat, up tempo. It sounds like you want to pogo dance. It sounds like you want to go skateboard. It sounds like you want to chug a beer.
It's more influenced, and I think a lot of that scene is very influenced by like thrash culture, and just generally, as you said, like skateboarding, kind of like it's very like it's a little cartoony, a little campy.
Oh yeah,
kind of. It's a lot. It seems like it takes itself slightly less serious than like the New York stuff. Again, then like
that's kind of what I was talking about.
The Casualty stuff.
The reason I even acquired this was because the guy that gave it to me, and I'm not going to say his name because I'm not 100% sure I got the right guy in mind. I only had a handful of these dudes back in the day, but I'm pretty certain that he was a super staunch political punk type. And I think he was like, not really for me, man. You might like this. And he gave it to me, and I put it in. Within like 2 or 3 songs, I was like, holy crap, this is my new favorite band. And I listened to that. I wore that CD out, bro. It was so good. I think it was a CD. It might have been a tape, but I think it was a CD. I get that kind of stuff. I get mixed up, man. I had so many of both back in the day. I had a lot of albums on both mediums. I had CD and cassette of a lot of records. So, but Grimple was one that, and I always liked the name. And then they had on, was it A Fucked Up Beautiful Day? That song specifically really like captured what I feel I behave like. It's got a little bit of emotion in it. It's got a little bit of carefree attitude. It's got a lot of that punk rock sound. They even have some like weird guitar chords that sound almost Operation Ivy like in some of their songs. This album really goes well with energy. If you wanted to put an A side, B side together, like I may do that on a video.
It sounds like a show or a party. Like that's the biggest compliment you can give to energy is that it sounds like and it's kind of like and they played, and then next up came Grimple, and you could totally see a very just like a synergy connection between that. Very much music again that's inspired by its surroundings, I think, probably.
Let's see. So also I can hear a lot of what became Operation Ivy in this album. ... Oh shit, wait a minute, I had it backwards. That's like my notes are ridiculous on this. Like I'm not even reading off of them because they're so confusing to even. But it's that's the album came out in 92. It's 15 songs in 23 minutes. Like think about that. Like that is a fast-paced album. That's right up my alley though. Like I want a 23-minute 15-song record. Like that's absolutely what I want.
Mm-hmm. And you could really, I think, if you do the Rancid connection to like the early like Lookout version of Rancid before they go to Epitaph.
Oh yeah,
it's kind of like a more melodic version of this stuff. But
really, you think so? I think the early Rancid stuff is a more street version of this stuff.
No, but okay,
it's more rough on the edges.
Maybe I'm thinking of the album that I dove into a little more though too.
Maybe yeah.
Of that and that stuff too, like that album. Has a lot of like the Hellcat sounding stuff, like the hardcore Hellcat sounding stuff sounds a lot like dope. That stuff. Like it's a lot of like the F- and those kind of bands. You could hear a lot of that, and which is just the sound of hardcore really is what it is. But the way it's so punk tinged, the way it still has. It's like this seriousness that like you would almost mistake for Slayer, but it's got like the snot of punk rock still in it. It's got a punk rock sort of Johnny Rotten sneer still sort of.
Isn't that weird?
In its spirit, yeah. It's why it's cool. Like generally, I always say I don't like hardcore because I always say if I want to listen to that stuff, I'll just listen to metal. But what I think what those people really are getting at is bands like this that have a lot of the punk feel to it, but just using some of the instrumentation and stuff of metal. Like I think if more hardcore sounded like Grimple, I would be more into hardcore just generally.
Yeah, and I don't consider Grimple hardcore at all. Like I don't. Isn't that funny? It's just I think that there's like these gaps in the description of these sounds and words, and I think I think that the lines are so blurred and it's such a muddy subject. I'm literally doing a video on oi foi. You know what that is?
No.
It's cold oi. It's a whole kind of a new sound, man. It's been around for like there was like little glimpses of it in the 80s and some glimpses of it in the 90s, but in like 2020 it really took off. So I'm having to do like this whole. I'm really putting some work in on this video, so I hope it really takes off. But like, my point is that there's the lines are blurred when you talk about genre, especially one as crazy as punk. Punk rock has look. People can say whatever they want, but there are rules to punk rock. There's rules to everything, man. It's not. Punk rock didn't start out as this political ideology thing. It was a rebellion against the adults. That's what punk rock was. So the fact that people associate it with strictly like a political thing is wild to me. Now, is there political stuff? Absolutely. I would say at this point, probably more of it even. You're associated with punk when you get political. You know what I'm saying? But the lines are just crisscrossed and blurry. So, you could call this hardcore. I don't even hear a hardcore note in this. It's wild, but that doesn't surprise me, and I'm not even arguing that it is. I'm just saying I've never called it that, and
I'm not calling it either. I'm saying if hardcore was like this, I would like it more.
Oh yeah, I mean if hardcore was like this, it wouldn't be hardcore though, right? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. I guess that's kind of the.
But there are definitely like elements of what people consider hardcore in this music. I just unless we're talking about it, I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing more skate punk than anything. Skate punk and street punk kind of intertwined. It's got a lot of both things. The street punk stuff, but people call that hardcore. So it's again blurry lines, man.
Well, that's why it is though. I always think of convenient. Like if you think of like pop punk being at one end and like hardcore punk being at another, and then skate punk lands kind of in the middle, and we're always sort of doing that like the little slider of where
this one leans a little bit
where it kind of goes. Yeah. It's like
there's a lot of very good poppy. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Like a lot of great poppy melodic elements in this that I think some of the more like hard-nosed punk guys maybe don't like, but I am attracted to that. I really like that.
Very much a cult band, I would say. That they sort of their band. The people who like them really love them. Like the logos and the patches are more. They're like an underground version of like I'm wearing a Misfits shirt now, where it's like you see these people wearing them and you wonder if they've ever actually listened to them or if it's just kind of a thing. They kind of have that status a little bit.
That's why I'm very adamant about the lack of knowledge I've got, because I don't ever want to be that guy where they go, "Oh, he doesn't know shit." No, I know some. I don't know everything, though, man. I know what I like about it and what I don't like about it. And the only thing I don't like about it is that there's not more of it. Really, that's my real legitimate gripe on that type of music. Let me see here. Go ahead. I'm listening.
You know what? Too, it is unfortunate because a lot of music that became really popular a few years later, a lot of those bands' early music doesn't sound that much different than this. So you might say like, oh, well, this couldn't have never made it big or never would have fit in the 90s. Like, well, like early versions of a lot of these bands wouldn't have fit in the late 90s either. And this is a lot more in line with what those bands did anyway. So to say that like they wouldn't have maybe like hooked up with Brett or something on the next album and had like a huge album, I don't think that you could make that claim. Like, it's something we wouldn't know, but I think it would be very much in play with a band like this.
Well, if you listen to the words on A Fucked Up Beautiful Day, that song, if you just sang it different or played it different, it could have been any number of bands. That could have been a Rancid song. That could have been a NOFX song. That could have been a Sublime song. That could have been a lot of band song. And that's like the first one that really, actually, that's not true. Grimple Up Your Ass, like the title track, is the one that's really stuck with me because it's so catchy. And then it, and then it stops, Grimple Up Your Ass, and it goes back into the song. Like that's attention grabbing. That stuck with me. But when I listened to the full album, that other song is the one that really grabbed my attention, and it became the one that I put on all my mixtapes. And there's probably like 80% of this album that has been on my mixtapes. There's only a handful of songs that I don't just truly love, and even the ones I don't love per se are songs I really enjoy.
They're all good. They're all good, like mosh pit songs, like regardless.
And the whole album's really great. I think we've talked as long as the album is, so I think we should move on. I think okay. So what is your kind of feel on Grimple though before we move on?
Yeah, I give it a solid thumbs up. It's not something I would ever like skip if it came up in a shuffle. I don't know how often I would necessarily go to these albums as a whole, because I like a lot of other stuff that's more like influenced by it. But again, like it's a band that like it's never going to be on when you're at a punk show and they got the DJ going ahead of time and Grimple were to come on. That's like a good time in my opinion.
Right. I think that I give it an absolute A++. I think that it's one of those things where it really fits with the Operation Ivy stuff to me. Not quite as iconic and good, but very close. I like it. I like it almost as much. If I wasn't such a Rancid fan, let's say if Rancid had never come around, this might be as important as Operation Ivy was to me. Because I was a Rancid fan before an Operation Ivy fan. I was young, so I found them, and then I found Operation Ivy because of Rancid.
That kind of backwards path, yeah.
It's attached to me in a different way. But had Rancid ever happened, I might have gotten to these two bands and been like, oh, these sound similar enough. I like this the same. Mm-hmm. So I put it in that category. S-tier band for me. Yeah, I think it falls right in the middle spot of like A and S-tier for me personally.
Well, I would say because your action figure comes with a Grimple patch on it, probably, if they ever made an action figure.
Right.
So that's pretty high praise.
Yeah. I mean, I literally was going to give this hoodie away, and the only thing I was going to do to it was take off the Grimple patch and keep it. Yeah. Like that's the only thing. I have a giant Rancid back patch that's like hand sewn in. And I was going to leave that on, but take the Grimple patch. Like that should tell people something about
very much part of your identity, I feel like.
Yeah, it sounds like me. That band sound. If I was to go here, listen to this, and if I was to make a mixtape, it would probably be Operation Ivy, Grimple, NOFX, and Rancid. And I would go here, listen to this, and probably some early Pennywise too. Honestly, the more I listened to that early stuff, the more I realized that how influenced I was by that band. Talking to Jim yesterday really like put into perspective how important that band is to me. Like, I didn't realize that I was going to be like a little nervous talking to him. And I didn't realize how much I fuck with his albums, dude. Like I did a tier list video, just like a live stream yesterday, just kind of like in preparation for talking to him. And everything I wanted to put in S tier because I like all of it so much. You know, we did the video on it. How hard was it for us to even rank those albums?
There was no bad. We even said there's no bad music. We were just
no. There's nothing that I would say was even close to like.
There's no like what
mediocre
were they thinking
no, it was like everything was like very. I hate the whole Pennywise does a da da da. It's like, yeah, dude, they found a sound that they were good at and they perfected it, bro. Not many bands can even do that.
But also but read the lyrics, because if you want to see where the progression is or the differentiation or the thought, it's in the lyrics.
Right.
They're a lyric band who's also just really, really good at the music side of it.
You never really associate Pennywise. Excuse me, man. Long night last night. Never really associate Pennywise with politics until you start listening to the lyrics. I never did. I always because when you hear them, I always thought of fun. They remind me of having fun.
See, and my first interaction with Pennywise was Land of the Free and the video to Fuck Authority, and it's George W. Bush and the tanks. So that, for me, instantly, I've
never even seen that video.
For me with politics. Yeah,
I've never even seen the video. I don't watch music videos very often. When I listened to Pennywise, it was more bro-him and like skateboarding and like literal skate punk. So like my thought of them when I was younger was, no, this band rules, dude. They're fun as hell to listen to. Stage dives, man. But then when you get into the lyrics, you're like, oh, damn. Like there's a lot of personal politics, but there's a lot of politics, especially in their later music. When they hit like 26, 27, 30 years old, they were writing about shit happening.
And that's why I think I like Straight Ahead. That's why I think Straight Ahead is my favorite album, though, too, because it's kind of it's when they really start kicking that into gear with songs like Greed and My Own Country and that kind of stuff.
I can't wait for you to listen to this podcast, bro.
I'm interested in it.
You're going to have a big smile on your face
because I'm like you. It's every time we've never done a top 10 anything list, and there wasn't some kind of Pennywise something on it, whether it was guitar.
Dude, that's a good point.
Bands, albums, songs. I don't think we've ever done a top 10 list that didn't have some Pennywise influence on it.
That is a good point. Okay, so all right, we're gonna talk about some NOFX stuff here for a minute. This is what I would like to do.
Okay,
I have a fair amount of notes, but I don't want to like necessarily go into detail. Can I just like kind of read off my notes on the album? And then I want to let you kind of go hog wild because I know how important this record is to you.
Okay.
And, my opinion of it is a little different than yours. My respect level is probably pretty similar, but my opinion of the album. So, okay. NOFX Punk In Drublic, dude. It came out on July 19th, 1994. It is 17 songs and a crisp, clean 40 minutes, bro. It is, chef's kiss, dude. That is a great length for an album of 17 songs, in my personal opinion. The notes that I wrote down, I literally sat on a toilet and listened to this again. Not in its entirety.
Immersive, though. That is like, like some albums you're supposed to enjoy while you're driving, like Dark Side of the Moon, Wizard of Oz, you know what I mean? But I think Punk In Drublic on the toilet might be the equivalent of that.
And like I wrote a lot of notes on the album, and then, ultimately I got up and sat in my armchair and just continued what I was doing.
I was gonna say, I know it's a crisp album, but like you might have some medical issues if it takes the whole album.
40 minutes on the toilet would be yeah, that's gonna be bad news bears. But it opens up with Linoleum, arguably their most iconic song. I can hear this song anytime and I love it. Mike's vocals sound different on that song though, and it's kind of weird, but it starts off with that, and the starting point of it being that song, I think is a little odd because of his vocals being so different, but it's a great song, and the production on this album, you get it immediately. And one thing I do appreciate that I did was I listened to it multiple times on different speakers, but when I listened to it the last time, I listened to it on my earbuds, which are fairly nice, but I turned the volume up pretty loud. And I don't know that I ever appreciated the guitar tone like I did last night. Last night was when I did it. Then it goes, Leave It Alone has a great shift in melody after the intro. The fucking guitar tone in this album is about perfect. I like the songs on the record, but I love the production, especially the guitar tone and vocal melodies. Dig as a song I don't really remember, to be honest, but that drum fill is absolutely absurd. Again, I point out the production of this record. I appreciate the effort to keep things interesting with the tempo switch and ska chords, but I've never liked NOFX ska stuff personally. I think the beef I have with this album is that I prefer the sillier, more sarcastic side of this band. And Punk In Drublic is a very heavy, dark, and serious album for the most part. So it just doesn't do the same things for me that their later records do. That being said, the songwriting on this record is in a class all its own. The band is super tight, as always, and these songs just sound so freaking good on this record. You have anything you want to say yet?
I would say a few things. I don't disagree with anything you said. You pointed out a couple of things. You pointed out the production. And I always want to note, this is the first album they fully worked with Ryan Green, who would go on to produce most of the Fat Records catalog throughout the mid-90s. And he might have been working with them before that, but he produces this. He produces all the Lagwagon, all the No Use for a Name. So whenever you think of the Fat sound, it's really him and Smelly kind of creating it on these albums. So the production is noted, and that was one of the things that's always been noted about these 94 albums, is all these Epitaph albums sound good enough to be in a Walmart. Not just that they were actually distributed to that, but they don't sound like punk record. Like even like compare this to like a minor threat record.
That's a lot of punk rockers' complaints about them. Actually, I prefer it, but a lot of people are like, no, it sounds too cleaned up. But I mean, you've talked about that producer a lot on this show. I don't know as much about him as you do. I've always been more of the Epitaph guy, so I don't know as much about Fat Records. I like a lot of it, but I love Epitaph.
And it's 90s and it's funny because they're on Epitaph for this run with him. It's just but the relationship kind of, and I forget exactly how Ryan Green comes in, so he comes there. And I want to say, here's a funny thing. So your objection, so to speak, to this album is that because it's loaded with so many serious songs, is exactly for me the thing that kind of puts it over the top.
You were going to say that,
and I realized this remember we talked about how I like some of the older NOFX because it's a little bit more serious and stuff. And to me, like that's the whole thing of this album is it's got plenty of NOFX silliness on it. It's not like it's a super serious album, but it's almost like their minor chord album in a lot of ways compared to the rest of their 90s stuff. It's just like even the song Linoleum. What I like about it is like it's a sad song. You end with the Scavenger song at the end, which is kind of an epilogue to Linoleum. Like a lot of the album and the lyrics is like. It's sad. It's we always talk about this thing that the 90s are the political music in the 90s is more a take on all of our society and what we have become. And NOFX does that as well, but instead of it being like the Pennywise thing, we're fighting this power and all this, Mike kind of takes like, this is sad, this sucks, and this is this despair. I think when you think about it, like Pennywise and Bad Religion are more like diagnosing the whole systems of society and this kind of thing.
100%.
Rancid and NOFX are more looking like around them individually. And it's more like stories of these individuals and where they are. And like in the case of Tim from Rancid, it was a lot of first person perspective, where I think this is more of like the observation as Mike, who is himself a fairly affluent dude, but hanging out kind of in street culture and again, that LA culture and all that and what he observes. At the same time, you can have songs like Jeff Wears Birkenstocks and
we're gonna definitely get into that in just a minute. Actually, I absolutely love that stuff. I like the silly shit is what I like the most from NOFX. So speaking of that, we go into the next song. It's not silly, but it's the song The Cause. Now this is one of my favorite songs on the album and maybe of the band. Remember listening to this one on mixtapes I made back in high school. Lyrically, this album is absolutely fantastic. We go to the next song, Don't Call Me White, and I just don't like this song. I think it's the hook that the hook is annoying. I just don't call me white. Don't call me white. Now it gets stuck in your head. It's an earworm, but it's not one that I care to listen to, man. So I put on here, I said, I think it's the hook I don't like. The lyrics are otherwise great, and the vocal melody is pretty wonderful. I just have a poor memory of this song. Not 100% sure why, to be honest. The hook is kind of meh, but otherwise pretty strong. Absurd bass tone, by the way. So, like, there's a lot of it that I like. I think it's just that one part is so grating to me that it just makes me not even want to hear the whole song, which is stupid, but it is what it is.
So I will comment really quick, because on this album, just really quick, you have Linoleum, Don't Call Me White, The Bruise, Lori Myers, and Rico. Songs that are so like embedded in the NOFX ecosystem, whether it's their live sets or the fandom or the mixtapes. It's almost like Metallica's Black Album or Nevermind by Nirvana, where like half of the songs are considered hits. So you're almost numb to the quality of them because we've heard them also
that might
so
be
many
some
times.
Of what it is.
Like
I don't
for
like
me,
a lot of those songs you just mentioned.
For me, Leave It Alone and Don't Call Me White. I love those songs, but like even when I've seen NOFX live, those are the two songs that I've kind of checked out on a little bit because I'm kind of numb to them. I've heard them so often; they're so like ubiquitous.
No, I've definitely heard that song a million times.
The first time I ever heard "Don't Call Me White" real quick was on the Rancid split. It was the Rancid version. It was the first time I'd ever heard it.
That's funny, bro.
So I think Matt actually. I think Matt sings on this one on the split. That might have been.
Of course, he does.
Heard that.
I think I've officially decided I don't care for that split.
Oh, hey, we finally landed there.
Yeah, man. I don't like actively dislike it, but I just like there was such a weird like choice of songs. I don't think that any of the songs they picked were the right songs, and except Radio. But then they turned it into a ska song, which I didn't really care
for.
for.
And they've made that version like their version of it too. Like they've brought that one out with them. And you just
they played it in Dallas.
You do have specifically. You've always had you don't like their ska and reggae stuff.
Again, that's going to come up on this notes too. I'm halfway through it. We're getting there. My heart is yearning. Great music, stupid lyrics. That's all I wrote. Perfect government. Wonderful opening and switch with the vocals, great lyrical flow and performance. Again with the guitar tone and the tightness of how this is played on this album. The bridge and more vocal melodies. This is an anthem. I've seen tons of people singing this one arm in arm. Great guitar lead and outro as well. And then I put The Bruise. Yes. This one is another song I had on mixtapes as a kid. I love this bro hymn type song. Great fuzzy guitar and amazing drum sounds. Slower tempo to shake your fist in the air while singing at a show. Amazing song. One of the first NOFX songs that I knew and loved.
So, and I'll interject real quick. My band in high school, this was on our set, The Bruise, because it's also one of the easiest songs to play. There's like 4 notes.
Right.
The hard part about it is Smelly does switch tempos a few times, so it makes it a little bit dynamic. Now, again,
I guess so, huh?
Back in the early 2000s, we're hanging out here in rural New Mexico. We didn't get the irony of a pro-Jewish skinhead song. And how funny that was, and that was the idea of the song. Well, it was like connecting Jewish, it was the Jewish skinhead and sort of poking fun at people, poking fun at that culture, and it was such a funny take on all of that. That
poking
I really
fun
didn't
at
get at the time.
I have to say this, like poking fun at Nazi bonehead type shit, because skinhead culture has nothing to do with that. I want to be very clear about that. Skinhead culture, not to you, but to the audience, has nothing to do with that. It just doesn't. They don't even consider those guys skinheads. They're boneheads. Like that is a very small part of a group, and that people have infiltrated a large community and tried to make it their own and failed miserably at that. But the media likes to sensationalize things, and they only bring up that stuff. Case in point, Geraldo Rivera getting the shit beat out of him by a bunch of boneheads on his own show, like a dumbass. Like, I get that that's what he was trying to bring light to, but they all they do is focus on that, and they made everybody think that that's what a skinhead is. Bro, what? Skinheads come from black culture. Like, what are we talking about? Anyways, dude,
I think The Bruise is a commentary on that. It's kind of it is poking at everything, but you're saying. No, it's in agreement with you. It's because you have
your average like pop punk fan, they don't know that, man. Like I get so many comments from like youngsters or pop punk kids that are like, so what's up with the skinhead thing? And I'm like, no, bro. Like here's the deal. Here's a link to a video. Go watch this. You'll understand all of it. It's it come from Europe mostly, and it come from lower class black kids and white kids having to make it. And it started with ska music. It's not even like, it's
the film American History X did not help things either, because people tend to associate that as that's punk rock, or that's oi, or
it's so crazy, man, because that's shit. American History X, what's the one with Russell Crowe? This Is England. All those movies are all like about the fucking it's because that's the stuff that'll get people's attention. If it was just a bunch of working class guys doing their thing and going to shows, drinking beer, nobody would give a shit. But then there's this like 1% of 1% of 1% that are just absolute garbage, and the media goes, check these guys out, and you're like, bro, it's just like talking about all punk rockers are drunk dope heads. Like, that's not how it is, bro. Like a lot of them were. I was at a certain point, but I know a lot of straight edge people, man. Like, it's just not everybody. So anyways, I don't want to go into that anymore, because I'll rant for another hour. I put Dying Degree was a decent enough song. I mean, it's okay song. I don't skip it. Fleas.
I do consider the Quas, which is mostly an instrumental, as just the first half of Dying Degree. I kind of feel like it's more like an intro to Dying, because it actually flows pretty well into it.
I actively skip Quas. I don't. That shit irks me. But that's another reason why this album has never been one that I just resonated with. Now, it is a linchpin to like my becoming a punk rocker, so I have to give it the respect that it's due. But just like a band like The Clash, I don't have to love that band to appreciate what Rancid has become. I don't have to love this album to appreciate what NOFX did. I can appreciate the album and respect it. I think again, I have some comments I want to get to here in a minute that I think you're going to go, and agree with what I'm saying here, at least as far as being subjective. Fleas, I just love how this album sounds, and I put sounds in all caps, more than the individual songs, but this is a really good deep cut track, almost like almost sounds like Rancid at points. I love that song. If you listen to Fleas, you hear a lot of Rancid in that song, which is one of the reasons why it's my favorite deep cut off the album. Lori Myers, classic song, but most people like it more than I do. I definitely like it. It's been a while since I've heard it. It was a good song. I liked it a lot. It just isn't what everybody else says it is for me. I think I'm just naturally combative on all fronts, though. I think that's what it is. I just naturally, if everybody likes it, even my own friends, I'm like, eh. It's like when I got crap for liking Rancid, I just leaned into it. I like them more now. And you know what I'm saying? And so I think I'm just that idiot. Jeff wears Birkenstocks. Now that's the song that I like. I love this song. Super catchy and infectious. Even made my daughter a tie-dyed Rancid t-shirt because of the song. And then Birkenstocks are mad comfy. Like, they're just like rad. I love them. I wear sandals all the time. I'm a fucking nerd. Punk Guy. Yep.
Yes.
This one we wore like a badge of honor back in high school. I love I heard They Suck live version quite a bit more, actually, because that's the first one that I heard. And I'm wrapping this up. Happy Guy. Pretty relevant song even today, though I personally disagree with the lyrics because even though I'm a NOFX fan, I'm fairly religious, and it's not a blanket disagreement with what they're saying. It's just not a black and white situation. So, like, overall, the lyrics, I'm like, okay, I get it. I just, whatever. I would love to talk to Mike about religious stuff just to get more of his opinion on it. I don't want to necessarily talk about it more than like ask some questions and listen. I've got my own personal beliefs and stuff, and I try not to shove them down people's throats. I got other things I want to shove down their throats. Fucking Rico. Don't like this one. Sounds like the end of a party, and the end is never a good time, in my opinion.
Oh,
and then Scavenger Type, the actual end of the album, just not a song I care about personally. The album ends on a super low note, in my opinion, which makes it not as good as a complete work as maybe some of their other albums. The secret song thing is so fucking stupid. I hate it, man. So, my overall opinion on this record, though, is that hands down, their best sounding album, probably their most complete work, and they're probably their greatest achievement outside of The Decline. And I personally put this ahead of The Decline, not by a lot. Stop it, people. Don't get mad. Punk In Drublic, The Decline. I just don't prefer it over their other records. I like Pump Up the Volume and Later more. I prefer the sillier, lighter tone. I prefer Mike going off and being a kind of an idiot. This is a little too, I don't know. It just doesn't sound like NOFX to me, because when I heard them first, I heard them on a live album. I heard this a little bit, but they were never my favorite band back then. I liked them, but I was more into like more upbeat music, and this record wasn't that. Which is why the album after this, I just don't care about. It falls into more of this sound. Then you start getting into the more, I don't know what changed with the. I'd love to like go back and reread that book. I've already read it once, but I need to reread it and see like kind of where they were at when this record came out. Because when like Pump Up the Volume came out, because something changed. Their sound changed.
Yeah, I read the book this morning. Like,
they've changed three times, or they've been three different bands.
They don't really say. Here's my opinion on that: is just it was just the passage of time. I think it's just a natural evolution. So you always have to account for a couple of things. So Smalley obviously gets better in 1992 because he gets off of heroin. So that definitely helps things just generally.
Usually it does.
So he's not. It's not like he's bad on these early albums, but it's just a different.
No, but that stuff will prohibit you from doing a certain amount of things.
Absolutely, type of sound. Also, so the factor on this is a lot of people like to point to Ribbed and S&M as like the start of the real NOFX, because liberal animation is just a bunch of crap. It's just kind of they just don't know what they're doing yet at that point. Which
Ribbed is like my favorite album by the band.
And the band would say that's where their modern sound started, because those were the two it's happened post Suffer, where they had more of an idea of which way they want to go, instead of just being an 80s punk band that occasionally had a melody. But the other thing that really, the reason why I consider White Trash as the start of the real modern NOFX is because that's where you bring in Hefe. So it's basically where you get the modern lineup. And Hefe musically pushed them so far forward. Like, it's already evident just on White Trash, and then on this album, like, Hefe is a major part of it. And you talk about the production, that's a big part of it too. So there's the story that they told in actually at the South by Southwest, I think in Dallas or Houston, wherever that goes down. But that for these two albums, Hefe was kind of like the producer, that he would just sit there in the studio and Mike would do a take and Hefe would say, "You're flat, you're sharp." And they, Mike didn't even know what that meant. But
I barely know what that means.
Being that Hefe was a classically trained musician, all those things, he just added this level of musical professionalism like to the band, which is why I think they're more, you can almost say it's like a more progressive sound almost later on, even though that's funny because you think of progressive as more serious and they be more lighthearted, but their sound, it's not as tight to me. It's more almost conventional on Punk In Drublic and that kind of thing. It's more truer to like form of like what a Pennywise, what a Bad Religion, what that kind of sound is. Whereas I think as they develop more of their own sound and they grow as a band and Mike becomes the cult of personality Mike, so he gains more individual personality than he has. Right. So that's a big difference. This is more like songs of like, again, songs of like suburban angst and one person's perspective and these diagnoses of the world. Whereas like Mike is, by the time we get to Pump Up the Volume, in my opinion, Mike is the lead singer. Like Mike is a front man on those albums, and they kind of go off of there. So I think that's just two little distinctions in the evolution of the band.
That's a good point.
I don't think there's like this big thing or this one thing. It's also Mike running fat for 5 years while he's on Epitaph, and all those, except for Pump Up the Volume, all the albums you really like came out on fat. So I don't know if there's constrictions with that. I don't know if there's just I don't know. So again, I'm not really saying anything of any conclusions, but those are all kind of the things that are in the air.
Well, those are all the bullet points as to how we got to the sounds that I prefer. And I will say, like sonically though, like while I may not like the songs as much, it's not by a large degree either. We're really like being nitpicky here, or at least I am.
Yeah, because we consider both of that all of that quality NOFX, right? Basically from like 1990 to like 2010, like
from Ribbed on, I think it's quality music. I just think that this is probably their best album. It's just not my favorite. That's what I'll. Yeah, this is probably their best album. It's just not my favorite album. I think that it's like the sound quality. Here's the thing, man. If you like all the songs on this album, like every one of them, right? This is perfection because it sounds absolutely amazing. And I don't recall ever seeing like a remastered version of this ever pop up, because I don't know that you can improve this.
No, I mean they got it pretty good on the first try. But again, look at everything you have. You've got these guys who were learning how to make records. You have Ryan Green, who had produced all kinds of stuff even outside of punk, and you have now they couldn't work with Brett. That was the thing for those early albums. They were too much of a clash of personality between Mike and Brett, and
that makes sense.
They're kind of taskmasters, I think, in different kind of ways, and kind of wore each other out. But you still have the distribution and the support of Epitaph, coming out again in the summer when the Offspring are breaking, and
crazy.
They were just in a really good situation too. I think in general, like that's, you talk about like, sometimes an athlete will get drafted to a really good team and they end up being a much better player later on because they were just in a better situation. Now, NOFX had to slum it more than a lot of these other bands at their front half. Like Rancid comes together a lot quicker. Well, I know they started Operation Ivy, but that happens a lot quicker. Like a lot of these bands, even Bad Religion, the first album came together really quick, and then they have the hiatus. NOFX is just kind of their like school side project for like 10 years until the second album comes out, and then they make like $5,000 touring and realize, oh, we might be able to do this a little bit. Crazy? And then the music landscape changes too. Like Mike will always say, like, shoot, as soon as Nirvana hit, that just changed everyone's attitude of like, oh, we might be able to make a little bit of money doing this, because it wasn't like them and Pennywise. It was just never a consideration. It was always just something that they were doing as like young people, because you do something and you didn't really have to get a job until it was able to become a job for them. And it's also the album.
Dude, how fortunate was that, It
really worked out for them, because like no other really generation of punk rockers that ever really did again. If you think about it, like guys that are coming up in bands
now,
the
90s was a unique time, man. You'll never replicate that.
And before that, obviously it wasn't the case. So that was there. And Mike always says too, these albums benefited so much from just CDs becoming a thing.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
It was cheaper to get out. You can get them in wider spaces. They sounded really well on CD. So it was a little bit of an upgrade. While punks kept producing vinyls, so these things ended up still happening in circulations. They kind of got all the mediums down. Now this album was interesting because you had all of the skate punk that was breaking, all the Offspring was breaking, Rancid was breaking, Jawbreaker was breaking, Green Day was breaking. So all of this was happening. So of course the vultures come for NOFX, and they only took one meeting. It was with I want to say it was Hollywood Records. They took one meeting with Hollywood Records.
Same label that put out Suicide Machines.
Yeah, and was hunting a lot of the underground stuff at the time. And Mike just was against it from the beginning, just because Mike. You got to remember, Mike went to college for two things: for business and human sexuality. Those are the two things he studied in college. You see a lot of it in Fat Records and in his lyrics, sort of coming out there.
Neither of those things surprise me.
No, and Mike was always been noted as like Brett's good at business, but Brett's also really good at like the songwriting and the art part of it. And Mike's another guy. Even Joe Sibbs says like Mike was just always had an intuition for like business, and he always did the math and realized they would make more on Epitaph than they were being offered. Like none of the offers they ever really got from the majors were those sort of knock your socks off offers. Hefe was against it because he had already been on a major label and realized how little of money like side guys like him would get. Smalley had just gotten sober, and his assessment is we're not that good. He said, look how cute Billy is, and look how cute the Blink guys are, and we have a fat guy with a rough voice. Like we're not going to end up. He was more thinking of like Jawbreaker and those bands that had tried and failed. The only one that was a little intrigued was Melvin. He said he was a little bit intrigued about the possibility. He said, but every time like one of these record executives, he said Mike just sounded so much smarter than them every time they would start talking, and so he couldn't really like there was no real reason for them to do it. And then Mike
surprise me.
He said he got his pride hurt because after they sort of rebuffed him, he told them, I guess the rebuff from the record label was, oh, I guess you're happy being second fiddle to Rancid and Pennywise and Bad Religion and this and that. And that really hurt like Mike's a pretty loyal guy, I think. And it really like basically you're saying like, oh, because my friends don't treat me well. Like, what do you think I'm going to be on this major label if I'm the fourth guy over there? Plus we're already getting paid more. And Mike said what it was for them is whenever the boom went down, bands like his that stayed independent didn't lose that much because there wasn't a big difference. Like for instance, in Albuquerque, there's like 2 punk clubs to play. There's one that's like holds 100 people more. But if you have to downgrade to the smaller one, it's not like a big deal versus you're playing an arena tour and then you're playing a club tour. So he said basically the popularity they got off of this album was enough to sustain them to be independent, to at least make the decision to stay independent for the remainder of their career. So it's important. In all those ways, there was that kind of 11th hour, and then they never talked again. They made a video for Leave It Alone. They didn't want to give the videos to Bob and Sticking in My Eye from the previous record to MTV. They just didn't want to.
Okay.
They didn't it seemed like they said they looked like Bad Religion and Rancid were very stressed out doing those kind of things, and NoFX only likes
to give probably were.
Yeah, NoFX comes right after, be like, oh, that looks like that kind of sucks. You know what I mean? So they were like, can we not do that? And Brett, having so much capital on hand, was like, yeah, that's fine. If you guys want to do that, that's fine. So they didn't give those albums to 120 minutes. Now, they did sort of reach a little bit with the Leave It Alone video, and they kind of they had a little bit of a relationship. But that's the famous story where I think NoFX was kind of playing hardball with that too. They didn't really want that video on MTV either, and they didn't really want it that mass distributed. It was getting a little bit of radio play, but they did give them No Use for a Name's Soulmate video, which is a very poppy song and was getting pretty good rotation on MTV. Well, the MTV execs gave Mike an ultimatum saying that if you don't give us NoFX videos, we're going to pull the No Use for a Name video. And Mike stuck to his guns. And Tony Sly, when he was alive, didn't talk about it in negative terms, but like how much did that affect that band? Because he basically had a stare down with them, and neither side bluffed. They did pull down they stopped distributing the No Use for a Name video because NoFX wouldn't give them the Leave It Alone video, which caused NoFX to go into this super. They'd never talked to the media, any of that, till 2000 when they started like coming out of their shells with the politics and all that other stuff.
Wholeheartedly support that decision. And I've never been a music video guy anyway, so I don't really care about that shit. But real quick. One thing I wanted to just say: South by Southwest is held in Austin. You mentioned it earlier. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to let you know it's Austin. Mainly because the people that are watching this, if they're from Austin, would be real pissed off if I didn't bring that up. Shout out Austin. I did some, I don't know if it's research is the right word, but I did some looking into things just out of curiosity when I was doing my first label. And as a band, specifically back then when CDs were popping, right? If you produce your own record, and let's say you sign with Warner Brothers, and your CD is going to come out, and they make 100,000 copies of the first run because they're not sure how big it's going to be. And let's say you sell completely out at $18 per CD. The band would get it's like 13% is what it was, and this is before they pay anybody, by the way. So let's say $18 times 0.13, they would get $2.34 per CD out of 100,000. So what's that? $234,000.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're an independent band and you just don't have the same money to advertise, you don't and you press 10,000 CDs and you sell them at $15 a piece. So now your fans are getting them for less money. 10,000 times $15, you make, I think you were making about, I think back then the CD production cost was somewhere around $1 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
So you're making $14 a CD. Like, just do the math, bro. Like, you can make way more selling less as an independent band. Have no stress. You don't owe anybody any money. So that way
it's all conducted in cash as well, right? Yeah.
The 234,000 gets divided up between the producers, the recording engineer, the guy that rents you the drums, the guy that rents you the amps. But if you're an independent artist, you just go to a place where you're familiar. You pay to be there. It's already paid for when the record comes out. Then the money is yours. You can live on that money. You can pay for your van. You can pay for repairs. You can get shirts printed. Dude, the same things are true today. An independent artist is far likelier to succeed if they actually make it. And I know that sounds weird saying it like that, but if you actually can make music and get fans, you're going to be like financially comfortable if you're an independent artist versus on a big giant label. My label is so small, it's a stepping stone to being an independent artist.
That was always Mike's calculus, and he was like his business plan was sound for the band, like broadly speaking. And so that was the thing that Larry Livermore was pleading with Green Day, because he had also done the math for them. And yes, they would have been paid out more on like Lookout, but they were an exceptional situation where promotion of them
to the rule
turned them into like a modern version of the Beatles. You know what I mean? So
I mean, there's always exceptions.
There's always and it's not like it's an automatic poison pill, but for somebody like NOFX, who I think kind of modestly, not downplays their talent, but just knows where their place kind of would be in music and being able to see what their horizons would be. That was so smart of them. But also, again, realizing how stressed Brett looked, how stressed Dexter looked, like all that, like, and they could just be a punk band. And like they were saying, like they were playing like those big festivals after this album came out. This album sold enough because it's all over like college radio and all that. So they're on major festivals, and like and then they get back into a van, and it's like they got to kind of live out their punk rock dreams and not have to like really hit that other level of that kind of like stardom that like really wears people out, man.
Well, yes, you can see it on rock stars look like shit for a reason. Mm-hmm. And when they retire, they get older, they look better. Like that tells you a lot. So the numbers are probably more
Mike has looked progressively worse while staying active.
Well, like with a band like NOFX, I think the numbers would probably be more something like a major label might print 1 million copies and not even sell out of them, while you might print 250,000 and sell close to all of them. Dude, they probably made so much more actual money just from doing what they did. And then can you imagine NOFX on tour with the fucking White Stripes or something, or like the Deftones? Because that's what would have happened. They would have been put on these tours that they didn't really fit on.
The same thing that happened to all these other punk bands that didn't make it when they, like the Jawbreakers, all of that. Like all of a sudden you're the wolf out there with the other group. Like you're really the black sheep. Then like NOFX literally only played one support tour in their entire career. And I think that's kind of telling of that. They've always been that sort of entrepreneurial thing. There was just whatever their first tour was, just like they were going out.
Way back then.
Like literally their first tour. That was the only time they ever played really a support tour. Every tour since then, they have had, like, literally the first time the Offspring ever played in the UK is because NOFX took them on tour with them.
Oh wow!
In the UK, it's funny how that played out. But no, they've always kind of had that. The Ramones had a similar thing too, where like they also didn't fit necessarily well always as an opening band, so they really were like a headlining type band. They would only do like opening slots again when they do like the Epitaph Summer Nationals or whatever we do, like Rancid and NOFX and those sort of major kind of things. But for the most part,
they always flip flop back and forth.
All their van tours, and even internationally were them as headliners, which developed the economics of it, the selling of the T-shirts, all of those kind of things. And you look at now, it's coming to an end. I'm going to go see them here literally a month from today. I'll be seeing them for 2 nights in Denver, and they're ending their career as a brand. You know, after going through the full first run as a band, like they have the full
realized this
band run, now the brand run. Yeah.
Oh man, that was not planned. Yeah, dude, that was.
I've been looking at my cozy is the this is the Ska Brewing, which I got over there, but my other one somewhere is the Punk In Drublic one. No, it's It's hard. Now we're just consumers of the NOFX, and it's
but
great. What a way to end.
They earned that though, man. They earned that. Like
no, and they had such a linear run too, because all these bands we talk about, like they're coming to an end now. Like how cool is that NOFX actually gets to kind of come to an end? They didn't burn out. They didn't do all this stuff. They did their things, and now they're just sort of calling it quits and fading into museum curators.
I talked to Jim about that a little bit yesterday. You could see like the sadness on his face, bro.
Well,
it was.
They
wild,
got announced
man.
as one of the supports for the final show, huh? Yeah, they were one of the.
Yeah, he was pretty excited about that. Man, that guy was so nice, man. I can't wait to talk to him again one day. Hopefully, who knows? But yeah. So okay, well, before we wrap up, because I got to get ready to make my lunch. I have to work today, so. We usually do this at nighttime. We're doing it at before lunch. This is kind of nice.
So that's why this guy on the other side of the screen isn't bent over in joint pain, and this is why I have life and energy and slightly less scattered thoughts than normal.
So what does this album mean to you, Rob? I know this is probably one of your, if not your best NOFX album, your favorite, rather, excuse me.
Yeah, yeah. So on your criteria of best and preference, it hits both of those for me with NOFX right at my top. And like, it's one of those where I don't ever even want to test it really, and just in case it's ever not the case, like it'll always just kind of be my S tier album. For them. For me, it would be. So I would always say like Linoleum would be my second favorite punk song, kind of undisputedly behind Roots Radical, and by virtue, this is kind of my second favorite punk album, probably behind. Wolves. Yeah. So it's a big piece of number two, as you would say. It's all those things that it's just not an outcome of the Wolves. That's my only criticism of this album, that it's not like the greatest album ever.
Well, that is a good criticism, because in my personal opinion, it doesn't have quite the quality throughout that Outcome the Wolves has. But I would say that I love the rancid sound so much that I'm just very biased to it. Mm-hmm. But shit, dude, after listening to this one like really closely a couple times on very, very good speakers, man, it doesn't do it justice to listen to this on a boombox. But even there, I think it'll just sound a step above everything else. It just sounds so good.
I love my vinyl version of it. I found it on vinyl a couple years ago, just randomly at like a pawn shop, and like I love hearing that through like the natural speakers too. Like it sounds great. It's Yeah.
Do I own that on vinyl? I don't know if I do. If I don't, I'm gonna have to order it.
It was hard to find for a while, and just randomly, again, we got like an indoor flea market we got over here that's got like a little tiny record shop, and I found it a couple of months ago, and there's a few. Some people have like the green pressings of it, which is
dude, I am such a stan. All I have on vinyl are these two.
All right, your top two.
Dude, right? That's so stupid. I really thought I had that on vinyl. I have to go buy a copy of that now.
It's fairly difficult to find. I don't know why. It's been released several times.
I'll locate it. I have other ways because I own a record store.
So I need to get White Trash, and I need to get the
on vinyl.
Yeah, and I need to get the mid 2000s albums. I've got those on CD like 7 times, but I don't have.
Let me know if you're looking for any of that.
Aerism, Wolves, and Coaster. I don't think I have everything. I have everything around those. I just don't have the. But NOFX is good in pretty much every format you listen to. They're
right. I like CDs a lot. I've been really getting into CDs again lately. CDs and tapes. I've always liked tapes though.
I love to go on one good CD for like the car and just live with that. Like that's like, and I'm not listening to that every time I'm there. Sometimes I'm putting Spotify on, but it's like this is what I'm kind of living with whenever I want to live with the CD. And I managed it. I'd get too messy if I had too many.
I think if I was going to do a car CD right now, I might actually go with your old Rancid Let's Go. I might have to do that because when we listened to it a couple weeks ago, I really fell back in love with that album, man.
Yeah, I've listened to it quite a bit this week.
I have a lot more respect for Punk In Drublic than I did when we did our ranking. Do you remember like my comments on it back then?
I thought it wasn't in your top 5. You kind of just noted it.
It still isn't. It's not in my top. But I do say like I will cite that it's like their best record probably. It's just not my favorite. And I don't know what that really means other than I personally prefer some of their other music.
When we do overall rankings, stuff that's lower tends to, like, it's hard to distinguish of, like, our actual appreciation for these things because they're kind of ordered and tiered like that. When we focus on one of these, I think it gives a little bit better context of what the album actually is objectively and subjectively.
Well, it happened with Let's Go as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said last week, Let's Go only suffers when I'm comparing it to An Outcome the Wolves. It's the only time Let's Go ever really takes any shade.
Weird how that happens, because it definitely does. I mean, I definitely
outsized
have.
Album. Jeez.
Well, you know what I was going to say before we go. I will say this. Uh-huh. So what I was thinking of a minute ago was, can you imagine? Because '94 was when all this shit was blown up, right? Mm-hmm. So they did Punk In Drublic, which I think did pretty well. Yeah. White Trash and Ribbed, I think, both benefited from that because they got like reissues and resold. Then they did I Heard They Suck Live, which was a great live album. Mm-hmm. That, I think, helped bolster the sales of Punk In Drublic, White Trash, and Ribbed, because it has all the best songs from those three albums.
Kind of like the greatest hits, yeah.
Almost, yeah. It's a really good live album. But can you imagine if they accidentally put out Heavy Petting Zoo or So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes in '94 instead of Punk In Drublic, and had to try to ride that same wave with those albums?
Well, it just everything pops later, and then like they benefited. They got to have their really good album in the same year that Green Day released their album. So
right.
What if what if it's all of a sudden?
Like, what if
we're in the middle of we're in the middle of third wave ska and nu metal in the late '90s whenever they released those albums?
It would have come out and just like.
It would have just kind of faded. Out. Yeah, absolutely. And instead, those albums are more sentimentally remembered because at that point, NOFX has like their dyed-in-the-wool national fans at that point. So they're good to follow. Like Heavy Petting Zoo is terrible.
I was going to say, those are not good records, man. So Long has some good songs.
I love So Long. I would disagree with you on So Long, but I think Heavy Petting Zoo. Heavy Petting Zoo goes with Liberal Animation as like the bottom of the. Like, what the hell were they thinking? It's just. And I can't believe that's how they followed this up. But again, it didn't affect them. Like, those tours were still extremely successful that they had, right? Because they just were riding the wave.
Yeah, I don't really care about So Long very much. I don't know that I dislike it, but I hate the cover.
Well, and
it's always been important to me.
And then your take on the serious tone that they have, it's a lot like this album in its serious tone though too. So I can see that as well. Yeah, but I mean, again, like it gets kind of inconvenient when we're ranking them because where I would say Heavy Petting Zoo is not terrible, but it goes behind like all of them, and then Liberal Animation is just straight up bad. Like it's like there's a charm in listening to it, but it is bad.
So 97. So in 2027, we're gonna have to do some. So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes deep dive, because I haven't listened to that.
I can't wait for you to have 3 years to change your opinion. That'll be great.
I know, right? I very well might. Who knows? I mean, Murder the Government, Monosyllabic Girl. How do you say that word? I just don't really care about. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't even know why I don't like it. You know what it is? That none of the songs just like. That's the one song I do like on that album. None of them pop out like some of their later material. I was also like super, super not into that band at that point in time. Like whenever that was their main stuff, when Pump Up the Volume came out, I was like reintroduced to NOFX. And so I just got back into them.
Volume and So Long are like their peaks as like musical performances. I think those albums, like they just like the songs sound so cool. They're a little bit longer on both those albums. And I just think
Pump Up the Volume is...
Pump the Volume is my number 2 probably. If it was when we did the list, and I think if I ever do this list again with a more like we did that, like a week lead time, but like a really thought out one.
They fluctuate.
I think it would still probably be like I assume that's always my number 2, and I don't even listen to it a ton, but it's just the quality of it is just ridiculous from sound, songwriting, and it feels like it has a foot in both worlds, both the '90s NOFX sound and it's like to what Aerism and Wolves and all that stuff is going to be. So it's just a great album,
dude. Aerism, Wolves, and Coaster are like, bro, man, that like 4 albums in a row that they did. I honestly think is like hard to beat by anybody.
I became a man because of those albums. Like those are old albums I was listening to. And
I became a man listening to them.
some literally maybe with Aerism for sure.
Oh shit! All right, brother, man. I am gonna go make myself something to eat and get ready for work. Try to make this chair before I get back home tonight, so I can sit in it and see how it feels. Yeah, I'm very, very excited. So, yeah, man. 30 years of Punk In Drublic. That's freaking nuts, dude. That is freaking nuts. Congratulations to NOFX for all the stuff that they've accomplished, and I hope that they ride off into the sunset a happy bunch of fellas, man. That's amazing. All right, brother. Oh, wait. What are we doing next week? Shit.
We haven't planned.
Oh, no. Wait, hold on. Give me a second. There's something coming. And
suspense.
I'm a child.
Yeah.
I can't help myself. Okay, let's see. Okay. Punk In Drublic we already did. Okay. There is something else coming up. There's a few things coming up, and I know that because I wrote it all down. Let's see. Oh man, August we have Stranger Than Fiction. That ought to be fun. Let's see. Dude, what was it? July 26th. Dude, we're gonna do some Madball in July. Do you like them at all?
Yeah.
Let's see. Damn. Shit, dude. Maybe we have to just come up with something on the fly here.
Well, 94 finally ran out of albums.
Not quite, but all those other stuff's in like August.
Yeah, the summer.
You know what we can do? We can do Lars Fredriksson and the Bastards Viking.
Viking? Okay.
Viking and let's see.
That's 04, right? So that's,
yeah. Let's do Viking and then let's do you know what? Let's cover Viking and the self-titled album. Let's just do a Lars Fredriksson and the Bastards episode.
Okay, Lars and the Bastards. That's
actually
a whole lot of heavy lifting.
Let's go. Yeah. That's gonna be a good time. I'm gonna grow a handlebar mustache and ride a Harley.
I'm gonna think of myself as such a street kid when doing the research. I'll be all trying to find relatability to this.
This is gonna be awesome, bro. I love those albums. Now they're tonally quite a bit different, but I love them both the same.
No, Married to the Sea.
Viking is a fantastic record. I can't wait to talk about it in depth. I'm gonna go do some research on that one like this weekend. All right, cool, man. Fun. Have a good weekend, brother. Let me know if you need anything. Are we trying to do it back on Tuesday night?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool, man. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Grow with this community. Come on. Let's go. Y'all have a good day, everybody. Love y'all. Peace.